The gentleman from New York is recognized for such time as he may consume.
I thank my distinguished chairman. Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to this amendment. I have listened very carefully to my friends from the other side suggest that this bill is just too expensive, that it needs to be cut. Well, let me tell you what's far more expensive. 30 years ago, President Carter told the American people that we were going to declare the moral equivalent of war on foreign oil. And the only thing we've managed to do in the 30 years since then is double our imports of oil from the Middle East and cut investments in renewable research and development by about 80%. So we've tried it your way. We've cut those investments 80% in the past 30 years. And what's the result? We've doubled our imports of foreign oil from the Persian Gulf. You want to know why this is so expensive a problem? It is a military vulnerability. 2 years ago, the Department of Defense spent $10.6 billion on basic energy costs because of this dependence on foreign oil. $10.6 billion paid for by the taxpayer. Of that, the Air Force spent half, $4.7 billion, on one thing, buying fuel, which is also paid for by the American taxpayer. Now, I believe, as many of my friends do, in robust military budgets. I am a very strong supporter of our military, and I believe we need to spend what it takes to defend freedom. And my friends would agree. The problem is this: because of the fact that we've tried it their way and our dependence on foreign oil has actually increased, we're in a position right now where we are borrowing money from China to fund our military budgets, to buy oil from the Persian Gulf, to fuel our military, to protect us from China and the Persian Gulf. $550 billion military budget. And we have to borrow the money from our adversaries. And guess what? Our taxpayers have to pay the interest on the money that we're borrowing from our adversaries to fuel our military, to protect us from our adversaries. It makes no sense whatsoever. We've tried it their way, Mr. Chairman, and it hasn't worked. I don't believe any one of my colleagues would suggest that we should cut the Department of Defense budget. We all believe in national security, and I'm with my colleagues on that. But as a matter of national security, we shouldn't cut this budget either, because this budget is a national security budget. Because it is not acceptable that a Stryker combat vehicle that is ferrying our troops into some very dangerous environments gets between 5 and 10 miles to the gallon, sounds like a 1957 Buick, and is a loud-moving target. It is not acceptable that our C-17s burn 3,000 gallons of fuel an hour and that we have to rely on our adversaries to fuel those systems. And so I would appeal to my colleagues on the other side that just as they are strong supporters of the Department of Defense and would never think to suggest a 1 or 2% reduction in military budgets, the same should hold true on this. And I would add one other thing, if I may, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that worries all of us and worries our military planners is not just the threats that we see in Iran, and we passed a resolution earlier today that I supported that would take a hard line on Iran and its attempted development on nuclear weapons. Not just those things, but loose nukes. But the fact that there is a tremendous quantity of nuclear materials proliferating around the world that we have to find, identify, and secure, because we don't want a rogue nation packing those loose nukes into a suitcase and bringing them across our borders. Well, this bill contains funding for the Global Threat Reduction Initiative, whose mission is to locate, secure, remove, and facilitate disposal of high-risk, vulnerable nuclear material and equipment locations. It does increase the President's funding level. I think the American people would want us to find the money to secure those loose nukes. Now, maybe that means there's a little less money to go to Halliburton in no-bid contracts. And my final point, Mr. Chairman, is this. The other side continues to say that this is a tax increase. It is not a tax increase. It will not be a tax increase. The other side is not accurately explaining this to the American people in the most diplomatic way I can put it. I will say this: it does require different priorities. The other side has no problem allowing big corporations to register themselves in offshore P.O. boxes so that they can avoid paying their fair share of taxes. The other side has no problem funding and bulldozing money to Halliburton in no-bid contracts The other side had no problem shoveling tax cuts to the richest oil company executives on earth. If the money was there for that, the money is there for this bill. Maybe we need to take the money from those priorities and put them into this priority. For America's energy security, for a strong future, and to get our troops out of those Stryker combat vehicles that are loud gas guzzlers and put them on something safer. This bill makes those investments, and those investments are ultimately in our national security. I thank the chairman and yield back the balance of my time.